Okay, readers. So, remember I was describing to you we really have to draw a line in the sand, which is a phrase that explains separation, things that were happening before that we were learning about, such as becoming the characters that we read. We almost like become them, we almost be them when we're reading to learn more about them. Now, moving on in the future, crossing that line, we're trying to like study the characters the way a professor would who reads hard, difficult literature. We want to develop some theories about characters. And to do that, sometimes we can read the characters like we read people in real life. Do you know someone who can read people really well? I do. It's my wife. I would like to tell you a little story about our son, Nathaniel. Now, bath time for Nathaniel is a really fun experience, but lately, even after we say to him, Nathaniel, do not empty the whole bubble bath or soap into the tub, we specifically tell him not to do that, and he will say, okay, I won't do it. If I forget and I leave that bubble bath on the ledge of the tub or on the floor, he will just dump the whole thing in. Now, my wife, who is a real great reader of people, will say to me, you know, he's not really trying to defy you. He just wants to test his boundaries to see what he can get away with. And he wants to assert himself a little bit. It's like a little victory that he's trying to get for himself. So let's see if we can read more in this way about the characters. We can read them in the books like we read people in real life. Chapter 23. The next morning, Rob put the keys to the tiger cage in one pocket and the wooden bird in the other, and set out looking for Willie Mae. He found her in the laundry room, sitting on one of the fold-up chairs, smoking a cigarette and staring into space. Hey there, she said to him. Where's your lady friend at? School, said Rob. But today is only a half day. He kept his hands in his pockets. Now that he stood before Willie Mae, he was afraid to give her the bird. What if it was wrong? What if he had carved it wrong and it didn't look anything like the real cricket? What you giving me that shifty-eyed looks for? Willie Mae asked. I made you something, said Rob quickly, before he lost his nerve. Made me something, said Willie Mae. For real? Uh-huh. Close your eyes and hold out your hand. I ain't, said Willie Mae, but she smiled and closed her eyes and put out her enormous hand, palm up. Rob carefully placed the bird in it. You can look now, he told her. She closed her fingers around the little piece of wood, but she didn't open her eyes. She puffed on her cigarette. The long gray ash on the end of it trembled. Don't need to look, she finally said. The cigarette ash dropped to the floor. I know what I got in my hand. It's cricket. But you got to look at it and tell me, did I do it right? Said Rob. I ain't got to do nothing, said Willie Mae, except stay black and die. She opened her eyes slowly, as if she was afraid she might frighten the bird into flying away. This the right bird, she said, nodding her head. This the one. Now you don't got to dream about him no more, said Rob. That's right, said Willie Mae. Where'd you learn to work a piece of wood like this? My mama, said Rob. Willie Mae nodded. She taught you good. Yes, ma'am, said Rob. He stared down at his legs. I know a wooden bird ain't the same as having a real one. It ain't, agreed Willie Mae, but it soothes my heart just the same. My dad said he ain't got no jobs for me until this afternoon. He said I could help you out this morning. Well, said Willie Mae. She dropped the bird into the front pocket of her dress. I might could find some way for you to help me. So Rob spent his morning following Willie Mae from room to room, stripping the dirty sheets from the beds, and while he worked, the keys jingled in his pocket, and he knew that soon Sistine would be out of school, and that she would demand again that he unlock the cage and let the tiger go. That was a nice chapter. So remember, we have to start reading the characters like we read real people in real life. To read people in life and in stories, it's important to remember that actions that they make can be like windows to the person. So things that the characters do can act as a window to help us understand the person better. So Rob had some really interesting actions in this chapter, and so did Willie Mae. Your job is to tell how else could Rob have acted in this chapter? What could he have done differently? Or you could pick Willie Mae and you could tell about how else she could have acted, what she might have done differently. Here's how I do it. For example, I think to myself, well, Rob, he wanted to give her that wood carving of the bird, but I could tell that he was hesitating. And for a minute, as he was standing before her, he thought to himself, he wasn't really sure if he wanted to give it to her. He was a little shy about it. That's what he could have done differently. Instead of giving her the bird as a gift, he could have easily just kept it in his pocket and acted as if he never had even whittled it, let alone keeping it. That's how I do it. Now it's your turn. Minimum 3 sentences when you describe how else Rob could have acted, or how Willie Mae could have acted differently.